Hey guys, welcome back to Domicom channel. I'm here busy putting together some Infinity terrain, but there's going to be links all around here so you can get to the piece of the video that you're most interested in seeing. It's going to be kind of a long video, and let me talk about what the various parts are going to be. I'm going to spend some time making some terrain, so if you're interested in looking at terrain, click down here. Infinity, the game, released a whole bunch of downloads. You can find the links right here or in the description area below. It'll be one or the other. I don't know if I'll be able to link directly to it, so probably just in the description area. But here's what they released. New units, including way more information about Toha, including points for various units, weapons, and rules. And if you guys are not, like I said, form monkeys going back and forth between the forms, swinging back and forth, click here. We're going to go into a little bit of depth into what might be coming up. So again, I'm moving this away, but click up here in order to get straight to that part of the video. So unfortunately there's a little bit of delay on the Campaign Paradiso book, not very much, just a couple of days. But I created a new mission for my group dealing with 0G. If you're interested in knowing about that mission type and you guys want to try it out, click over here and it will send you straight to a 0G campaign that you can just start using today. Just something to tide you over. Look, it's like an appetizer. It's like having the bacon wrapped scallops being passed around on the tray before the big meal occurs, right? Okay guys, so again, the 3 downloads that are available for you on infinitythegame.com, I have them printed out right here. 11 pages of new rules that are pretty much only Campaign Paradiso specific. This is 1 page of new weapons and 5 pages of new units and or respecking existing units. Included in the new profiles are 2 pages of just Toha units. Kind of awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the new rules, because that kind of leads into everything else. The new weapons we probably won't go into a deep dive on, but if you're interested in seeing it, 17 new weapons all in Campaign Paradiso, and the interesting thing, unless the model's pH is over 14, none of the weapons here are 15 or higher damage rating. Let's take a look at the new rules. There's a lot of them here. First thing that we're going to see is something very specific to only when you're running Campaign Paradiso campaigns, and that is the Cube 2.0. It's still vulnerable to EM ammunition and Interceptor, but models with Cube 2.0 effectively mean that they're coming back without having to roll to see if they survive from the transplant into a new body. Okay, as we move down from characteristics where Cube 2.0 is, we start looking at special skills, and the first one is Civvy. It means that the player reacts like a civilian, I guess, from the Human Sphere book. If you want more information regarding that, it's in the Human Sphere book on page 148. Then we start getting into the heart of the rules, which seems to be the emphasis of Campaign Paradiso with the introduction of different fire teams. The first one being the Enomotarchus fire team, and with this you can have up to 4 figures in your fire team, with 1 unit that has the Enomotarchus skill, and then 3 other troops of the same unit type. And their example is a Myrmidon officer and 3 Myrmidons. So you can use this table right here to determine which ones can be a part of an Enomotarchus fire team. Since it doesn't allow up to 5, then you can't get the +3 BS skill. According to the rules here, there's no restriction to the maximum number of this type of fire team, so could be pretty brutal, but with fire teams you also have that side effect of, you know, needing to not be completely crushed by template weapons. In here, if the Enomotarchus unit dies, it doesn't destroy the Link team. It kind of, or the fire team, it kind of follows Link team rules where you have to kill the Link team leader at the time. But if the Enomotarchus, if you don't have anyone with the Enomotarchus skill, then you can't reform that fire team. Then the next type of fire team that they talk about in their rules was something that was actually spelled out earlier on their Corvus Belli Infinity website, which is the Harris. Although here it actually specifies Harris level 1, so who knows if they're going to have different Harris levels moving forward. But with Harris level 1, it's up to 3 people in that fire team. The only example that I know of a unit that has Harris is the Odaless. So in a Odaless Harris fire team, all 3 units or all 3 models have to be Odaless. You can't, there is no, oh, I'll take a Hafsa and 2 Odaless. No, all 3 have to be of the same type as the model that has the Harris skill. Again, if you take out the Harris model, in this instance, because it's only 3 and you require 3 to maintain the fire team to begin with, you destroy the Link team, or destroy the Harris fire team. The next fire team that they specify in the rules that they released is the Toha fire team. What makes the Toha fire team very unique is that all other fire teams and Link teams, they all have to be part of a sectorial force. The Toha fire team, though, as Toha has no sectorial army at this point, all the unit, or you can set up a Toha fire team without having a Toha sectorial. It kind of is interesting from this standpoint because a lot of the Link team rules were based around the fact that if you were to pick, let's say, Ariadne, and you had this many units to choose from, then you decide you're going to take a Merovingian force. The number of units you can choose from, much, much, much smaller subset. So to make the sectorial army worthwhile, they introduced the notion of Link teams. With the Toha fire team not requiring a sectorial, I'm wondering if the number of units that are going to come out for Toha in this first book isn't going to be as broad as, let's say, Yujing, Panoceana, Ariadne, the like. Toha fire teams do not require the Harris restriction of it being all the same type. You can have any combination of 3 as long as all 3 members have the Toha fire team special rule. The next special rule is Ghost Auto Tool level 1, and I'll be honest with you, I read through it a couple times. I'm not quite sure how it plays out, so I'm going to skip that for this discussion and jump to Journalist. Journalist seems to be one of those things that has to do with, again, developing the notion of a campaign. It gives you some variation on how you set up mission types and campaigns and whatnot, and deals with and it dives into some rule regarding promotion roll. I don't know how that's going to play out, so it just seems like it's a benefit of some sort from a campaign perspective of an individual unit leveling up. But the amount of flexibility that you have with journalists causing new variations on how to do mission types seems like it really opens the door up. Like maybe you might even have, you know, the journalist model being that kind of model that's providing propaganda or bad press against your particular army. So your mission objective is to take out the opponent's journalist. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can be thrown in there. Number 2, this is a very cool rule. This, if your model has the number 2 special rule, then that means that within the notion of a Link team, your number 2 will take over for your Link leader if your Link leader is capped. So you have this flexibility to effectively maintain your Link team even if your Link team leader is killed, as long as your Link team leader wasn't the number 2 model to begin with. And the last special skill on this list is the Specialist Troop. Again, this deals with having something that can act as something else. So evidently specialist troops include engineers, hackers, forward observers in scenarios. Well, you can have this model that's a specialist troop probably for a lot smaller point cost that can't actually do hacking, engineering, or, you know, being a doctor or whatever, or forward observing. I don't know if a doctor is in there, but for the purposes of a scenario, this type of troop can perform that action that needs to be done to progress the storyline or to gain victory points. The only caveat is that if you use a specialist troop as opposed to, let's say, an engineer, then they have a -3 modifier. So that's all the special skills that we're going to talk about. Let's talk about weaponry. This deals with not the weapons themselves, but things around the weapons, like types of ammunition and whatnot. The first thing that they talk about is dual weaponry, and this was a question that I actually had when I started doing the Infinity tutorial, which was, they had the rule already out there that if someone had 2 shotguns, that instead of rolling for both shotguns, it was just burst +1. With dual weaponry, they spell out the fact that if any model has if any model is equipped with 2 of the same type of weapon, then it's only burst +1. Special ammunition. They made some modification to their shock special ammunition, but this was only to state that it affected other things such as level 3 no wound incapacitation and Valor level 2 dogged. So it's just some clarification. They now have a stun special ammunition. This means that if the model is hit, it goes against their BTS instead of their armor, and it causes a stun effect as opposed to taking that model to dead. Also, with those miniatures possessing special skills that allow them to act in an unconscious state, such as dogged or no wound incapacitation, stun special ammunition will have no effect on them. That's pretty cool. There's quite a bit of extra rules regarding stun. I'm not going to go into all of them just right now. We'll switch over to Swarm special ammunition. In Swarm, it acts like shock, but when you hit someone with it, you then put down one of their circular templates, and it causes low visibility, and it literally keeps that circle template to impact any models moving forward for the duration of the game, unless it's impacted by fire. Fire seems to be a big thing in this as being the ultimate type of weapon. We're going to get into more of that when we talk about the symbiotic armor of the Toha, but fire is good. You're going to see a lot more Nathatunes out on the board. You're just going to see a lot more fire weaponry out there. Because the Swarm acts as shock weaponry to begin with, though, you can't use it like Smoke, which is just target any open field. You actually have to target a model. The next section is in the rules that you can download are about weapons themselves. I'm not going to go into a lot of this, but one of the coolest things I've seen is this Flaming Spear. Again, fire weapon, where you take a circular template at the point of impact, and it causes fire around that entire area. Oh, I do have to talk about this one as well, which is a hedgehog weapon. It doesn't actually go... It doesn't hurt another model, but when you have the hedgehog weapon, it causes your opponent to take a -6 in close combat. That's pretty cool. It's a defensive weapon. Like I said, there's a lot of rules. I mean, we talked about the fact that they listed 17 new weapons, so a lot of pages on new weapons that do different things. You know, we have a stun pistol, so that's the stun ammunition. We have swarm grenades. So the next thing we're going to talk about is equipment. It's the next section, and it has some of the coolest freaking things I've seen for this game. One is defensive hacking device, which doesn't allow you to hack a tag, but what it does is allows you to provide a defensive covering for, let's say, hacking against guided ammunition that's coming at you, or preventing someone else from hacking your tag. And I'm going to guess that the models with the defensive hacking device probably cheaper than purchasing a model who has a true hacking device. Okay, so the next piece of equipment we're going to talk about is the nullifier, which is a deployable piece of equipment. You put it down, and 8 inches around the device, units cannot be hacked, sepsidered, forward observed, or flash pulsed. But units within that nullifier can't use those skills outside of it as well. But I really want to jump to this last piece of equipment that's listed, which is the Symbiont armor for the Toha. And it has a ton of rules governing how the Symbiont armor works. Effectively 2 full pages of text just on the Symbiont armor. I'm not going to go into all the details, but I want to kind of show you what the impact is on army lists. So if we take a look at the profiles, you can, and more specifically, take a look at the Toha profiles with the Symbiont armor. I don't know if you can see this or not, but you'll notice that there's an active and inactive state of the Symbiont armor. The Symbiont armor effectively is another creature that acts as armor, but also can at times, depending on the unit, provide buffs. Like in this example for the Ektros, with the Symbiont armor active, he gets a +1 ballistic skill. He also gets 3 armor, -6 BTS, and +3 to his PH. So with models with Symbiont armor, you hit them with fire, if they take a single wound, they drop straight to dead. Again, fire is going to be a big deal in Infinity. So that was a nice segue into new profiles, the last of the 3 downloads. We're not going to go over every single unit here, but I did want to cover a couple and kind of show you how to review this. So for instance, let's take a look at the Kaplan Tactical Services, the KTS units. You can kind of see here that they're a member of the Hakislam faction and can be used in a Kapu Kalki list, and they show you the actual unit count or max number of these that you can bring. So in a normal Hakislam list it's 2, but in a Kapu Kalki list you can take 5. Very cool light infantry unit. They're a little on the higher expense side, but I think that's in large part to do with the fact that they have a -6 BTS and a 2 armor, and also come with mimetism. So all in all, not too shabby of a unit. What's also very interesting about this type of unit is that it's also listed twice because it's also a merc. Let's take a look over at Wildcats. I'm not a Nomads player, but the really cool thing about the Wildcat is it's the first time that we've seen a number 2, which means if you have a linked team of Wildcats, not for Nomads, but for the Corregidors, which is a sectorial of the Nomads, you can take a Wildcat number 2, your linked team leader gets capped, number 2 steps in and goes, "We're still active, people." Get that +1 burst during ARO time. That's fantastic. The next unit I really want to talk about is the Ektramoy, which is an Aleph unit, but you're going to notice right here, new sectorial didn't exist in Human Sphere. It's going to come out with Campaign Paradiso. That's the new symbol for the Greek sectorial. This unit I think looks really cool. I love units that have super jump, and combine that with the fact that they deploy with combat jump. You really want to get this guy to be just moving all over the battlefield. Like I said before, we got 2 pages of Toha, and this list actually includes their point cost, so you get a sense of how potent some of these things are, and how many you're going to be able to put into your 200, 300, whatever point list. First one is the Ektros. The Ektros is that guy with the Symbiont armor, where the Symbiont armor really does impact his stat line significantly. And as you notice here, there is no sectorial for the Toha, but it includes the Toha fire team in the special rules, which means you can take up to 3 of this guy into a list, or combine him with another less expensive unit. We have the Klipsos, which is another unit that we talked about earlier, and they're, you know, for effectively under 30 points, this is a pretty potent model with TO camouflage and infiltration. But I think the reason why they didn't make it more expensive than that is that the armor value for this unit is 0. So hypothetically, as soon as she pops out of TO camouflage, a little bit more prone to being popped. So the next unit that we're going to talk about is the Toha Diplomatic Delegate, and depending on which one you want to pick up, one might have the Civi special rule, or one might be identified as a specialist troop. In either case, the first configuration, it's actually free to deploy. You can only take one of them though. And the taking it as a specialist troop, again, 5 points, much cheaper than taking an engineer or a forward observer, where you're going to be dropping a good, you know, I would say at least 15 points. I think that's the cheapest engineer is probably around 15 points. The next one, we have the Camille Toha unit, and again, no viral weaponry whatsoever. They kind of fit kind of nicely in between, effectively, a Ariadna Line Kazik and a Yujing Zhang Shi, from points perspective and from the weapon loadout and everything, line stats and everything. But the Camille's do have the Toha Fireteam special rule. A unit that we haven't seen before is the Sakil Regiment, and this is another one of those guys that has the symbiote armor. I'm hoping that this is how the printout occurs when the Devil Team updates the Infinity Army List generator. Again, you can download all this stuff from the Infinity the Game website. So, I guess that's about it. You guys know where to find it. If you don't, check the description area below. All the links to all 3 of the files will be there. Have a good one. Back to some terrain building. Again, I literally just took my miter saw and kind of went with the notion of doing 1, 2, 3, and 4 inch terrain, and by that I just cut a bunch of pieces with like a 4-inch height or 1-inch height or 2-inch. I mean, basically I just randomly cut some pieces together. But we're going to be building a nice bridge piece here utilizing these various pieces. So I got this piece, which happens to be the same as this piece. This is going to hold up our bridge piece right here, right? So we're going to take this as just something that we're going to bind to. We're going to allow bikes to get up to the bridge this way. Alright, so what we're going to be doing here is we're going to take some of these random pieces. We're going to build up a ramp that comes to up here. On the flip side, we're going to take one of the pieces that's going to hold the bridge, drop it right there. Put a little piece of metal there, magnets on the bottom of the bridge piece itself. And we're going to send the bridge this way. Meanwhile, we're going to have ramps to come up to this top. And the other piece of the puzzle. So it'll look something like that. Pretty playable piece of terrain, pretty psyched about putting it together. And again, trying to get more use out of having elevation with the possibility of vehicles to get up there, as opposed to just having ladders everywhere and not having the bikes be usable in a game. So right now I'm charging this glue gun up. It's kind of a nice glue gun. It has a, it literally is designed to be charged up, then you unplug it, and I don't have to be tethered to the wall in order to get this terrain all glued up. Alright, so let's get these pieces ready to go. Start gluing this side first. Now we'll go ahead and take this piece. Now what we did when we glued this on, we went ahead and glued the seam on before we decided to put the higher elevation piece in. And we're going to go ahead and glue this side now. And again, we're lining it up with the edge. You don't have to. I mean, you can make it. Terrain is one of those things that you can do a lot of stuff with. You don't have to be specific at all. But now, as you can see, we have a nice ramp up. Our large bike bases can stop there. It can also travel all the way up. We're going to be attaching, again, the first holder for the bridge there. So now we have the first section of the bridge piece all secured. We'll go ahead and, like before, glue in the seams. While we're waiting for this piece to dry, we'll go ahead and set up the other side of the bridge. And like I said, you know, I made a mistake here. And this is what I was talking about. Earlier I was talking about how, you know, when you make a mistake, don't sweat about it. Like I made a mistake here, cut a little too far with the miter saw. Just taking the piece that I cut to hold the other side of the bridge, covering it up, and calling it a day. With glue guns, you don't have a whole lot of time, but you can, you know, move it around just a little bit. So as these two pieces are drying, you can see all we're going to do is drop down the bridge piece in between the two, and we'll have it magnetized, like I said, with magnets on this side, metal here. If you're interested in seeing that piece of the construction, it'll come out in a future video. I'm still waiting on getting in a couple of magnets. So we're not going to be able to finish this project now. The other thing is, this, although fairly sturdy, I would not glue these pieces together because transporting this is far more complicated than transporting that. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed. Hey guys, let's talk a little bit about the Interceptor mission. It's a new mission that you guys can go ahead and use until we get the new books out. But before we go too far, I want to explain how I went about designing this particular mission. It was one of 3 missions that we wanted to set up for a slow grow tournament. And because it was designed for a tournament, we wanted to make sure that as the missions change, we didn't have to change what the terrain looked like. We wanted to limit the game length, so all the missions that we created for the tournament were only 5 turns. We wanted to provide a bit of a narrative between the 3 mission types, and we wanted to introduce some new terrain variables. That was a really big key thing that the guys in the Slow Grow League said, you know, as we're expanding our experience level, one thing we really want to tackle that we don't tackle on a regular basis is different types of terrain, so let's start adding those. The extra little piece of the puzzle that I did for each one of the 3 mission types was that I penalized different types of units per mission so that it would kind of get people to take an all-comers list instead of focusing in on a particular tactic or strategy. They had to kind of develop around it, and it allowed people to kind of think outside the box. And some people might go, oh, that, you know, that complicates the thing. It really doesn't. People who have played these missions or this particular mission, Interceptor, have had a blast, and there really haven't been any complaints about how we laid out victory points. So let's take a minute to talk about table layout, and this kind of goes into the template notion that I was talking about. Every single one of the missions that we had was designed around 300 points, and we wanted to do by 6x4 with a center line that went down the middle of the table with armies deploying on either side of the table on the short ends. If you want to play this mission at a 200 point level, or maybe even a 250, you could easily do this with a 4x4 table. Once you get to 300 points, you really do want to do a 6x4. So let's take a minute to talk about the Interceptor narrative. In this mission, both armies start on capital ships that have collided head-on. Both armies were aware that there was someone on that other ship that they had to take out, and it meant that they could risk their entire crew in doing so. The complications that arise from this is that as the ships have collided head-on, you start off in 0G, and as the turns progress, as you go through the game, the ships are repairing themselves by merging together. But in doing so, as they continue to merge together, they effectively reduce the effects of 0G. We'll go into that a little bit later. Okay guys, so the next couple of slides have a lot of reading involved.
So we're into deployment. All models of a particular army must start on their half of the board. There is one exception, and that is if you have an impersonator, they can start on the other side, but this kind of fits our narrative really well. Any member of your army would have been on your ship when the crash occurred, unless you happen to have a spy. There are some caveats on how an impersonator can deploy, though, and that is in the FAQ section of the mission that you can download. Links will be in the description below. Models arriving via airborne deployment arrive via combat jump with a -6 to their PH stat unless the model already has combat jump or tactical jump. Then they arrive via combat jump without that -6 to their PH stat. And this is kind of used from the Corvus Belli Prisoner 09 with the notion of models using airborne deployment are actually kind of crawling through vents, and as the ships are merging together kind of can jump into that other area. Now, since it is 0G turn 1, unless the model has 0G training, they cannot arrive during turn 1. This is because when you have 0G, you cannot combat jump into that area. Okay guys, let's talk about mission-specific terrain details. Turn 1, the entire board is 0G impassable. This is the normal state of 0G. We add an additional complication, that is models without 0G training within 4 inches of the center line have to take a PH roll at -6 or sucked into space, instantly killed. Turn 2, we actually change the parameters of 0G to make it very difficult, and we do this because if you play a game that is nothing but 0G impassable and you do not set up an army to specifically handle this 0G scenario, you are going to be pretty much hating life. You'll be able to move very few things. They're all going to be moving at half speed, and we want to make sure that the mission is actually fun. So we start saying that yes, the condition of the ships merging together still provide a 0G issue, which means that models have to be trained in 0G to move from very difficult to difficult, and that crack as the ships are merging together still means that models without 0G training within 4 inches have to make a PH roll -3 or are sucked into space. There is one other rule that I didn't actually put on this slide, and that is during turn 1, the center line that you have there, the vacuum is so strong that no shots can pass through that center line. And again, because we're in 0G impassable terrain movement considerations, this ends up being a very, very gracious thing. And you'll find that in this particular mission type, there's a lot of maneuvering around turns 1 and turn 2 and sets up for an incredibly bloody turn 3. Continuing with the mission-specific terrain details, on turn 3, ships are nearly done with their repairs. Treat the environment as difficult. Models with 0G training treat this as normal. Turns 4 and 5, ships have merged together fully. Terrain is normal. And due to the fact there is no place to run away, neither side will go into a retreat scenario. So the terrain complications and everything is great, but exactly how do you earn victory points and actually win this game? In this scenario, there's 3 ways to get points. One is annihilation. You take the number or the points of the models slain and divide by 30, rounding up. And models must be dead, not unconscious. If they're unconscious, they don't count to your victory points. The second way to get points is the reason for the crash. This is the model that your side wanted to annihilate. And at the beginning of the game, directly after all models have been deployed, you pick a model on the opposing team that is your model that you have to annihilate, and you mark them, and your opponent does the same. So you choose who it is that you're trying to destroy. This is another reason why having that invisible barrier between the two armies that doesn't allow shots kind of is a good thing, so that you get one turn to try to protect that model before it's an all-out assault. The other way to get victory points, the last way, is to take out the lieutenant, and you get 2 points for killing the opponent's lieutenant. Again, there is no retreat scenario because all models would go out into the vacuum of space, so they're going to fight to the last man. And again, it sets up for a very, very nice 5-turn, just crush the opponent kind of mission. All of the details for this particular mission, and I mean every single detail, including a pretty extensive FAQ, can be downloaded at this particular link. And this link is also in the description area, so you can go ahead, grab it, and feel free to let me know what you think. And again, I'm not trying to say that I'm Corvus Belli. I'm just trying to give you guys something that you can test out while you're waiting for Campaign Period ECO to come out. Hope you guys have a good one. That's the end of this video. Thank you for sticking around. Bye.